It's so much quicker than Google Meet. I'm going to start using BlueJeans for everything now. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second CentOS Automotive SIG meeting. I'm going to share my screen here, if I can find it. There we go. Into presentation mode. So this is the second meeting we've got. I'm hoping that everybody was able to finally make it in this time. I apologize for the telecommunications problems from last time because they were terrible, and we will not be using that particular solution again. We'll be going ahead with this one. But let's go ahead and dive in because I want to make sure that we cover everything. I put together a brief agenda. The first 4 bullets are things from the previous agenda to make sure that everybody gets them, and we can buzz through them pretty quickly, but I do want to make sure that these things are covered. So diving in, let's talk about why do we have an automotive SIG in CentOS? And that's a really good question. The primary reason is the advancement of distro-based automotive Linux. There have been a lot of attempts at automotive Linux. There have been a lot of great successes in the case of AGL. There have been a lot of people building parts of automotive Linux systems in Linux and in the Linux ecosystem. And what we would like to do is try to get it started using a distro as the base, which is somewhat different from the way that other people have approached it. We want the CentOS SIG to be a focal point for working with other upstreams. We'd like to bring in as much hardware as possible, and we'd like to be in contact with other related projects. I know that there are some new projects starting up and some existing projects out there that are really useful, and so we want to be in contact with them and bring them in either as upstream or adjacent projects, or in some cases as standards bodies. This SIG will be a public development point for proofs of concept. We'll be putting together a variant of CentOS, sometimes also called a spin, which will be essentially like a reference platform. I would not expect somebody to take it and dump it into a product, but it will certainly be the place where we can look at it and play with things and test out solutions. I know that there is a technical team right now that is working on infrastructure that will be able to use this variant as sort of the test bed. And anyway, that's one of the general goals of the SIG. And the fourth one here is that an upstream resource and a primary test bed for RHEL in an automotive context. We want to make sure that we're fully transparent that the reason that Red Hat wants this SIG to exist, because we intend to use it as an upstream for our eventual automotive product. We do not have an automotive product at the moment, but it is coming, and this SIG is the place where we want to do the work, because it's part of Red Hat's principles and guiding values to do this kind of work in public using the open source best practices. So moving on, there are some general goals. Covered these, didn't we? These are the general goals that I think we just really talked about. This is the way that the SIG, well, this isn't it, there we go. This is the way that the SIG kind of fits into the Red Hat system. The way that RHEL is put together is by using upstreams and by doing as much work as possible in public. There will be things that happen in an automotive context that aren't really appropriate for RHEL. And so the place that we would do those is either in those upstream projects or here within the CentOS SIG. And given that one of the principles that Red Hat operates by and that is an open source best practice is to move upstream first and to go as upstream as possible to do the work, we will be doing a lot of work, I think, in other upstreams and then bringing that work into the CentOS SIG At least that's the theory. Given that we're only 4 weeks into it, I don't have an example to show yet, but I think that that is exactly what we will be doing. And Red Hat has a long history of working in this way. I could also see some work being done in Fedora. And in fact, I would like to see that very much. But CentOS is a stable enough base, and the CentOS stream process, I think, is going to be very useful for us. So I'm hopeful that we can do all of that. Any questions so far? If you have any questions, feel free to just mention them. I cannot see the chat at the moment, so if anybody's like making cool snarky comments, I'll miss them.
I'll watch chat for you, Jeffro.
Okay.
We're good. Nothing so far.
No, that's too bad. All right. This is the general goal slide once again. I'm not sure exactly why. One of the things that Rich had put down as a general goal was to promote and produce demos and to possibly develop some stickers. I don't think we're quite at the stickers phase yet, but I'm hoping that we will get there at some point. The main thing that we want to just kind of get our feet wet with right now is working on this CentOS variant. This is a mistake on this slide. I don't think it'll be based on Rel for Edge. It'll be based on CentOS. And it'll have a regular release schedule, I hope. Hopefully we'll get Ian and possibly Pierre can talk about that in a few minutes. So some specific goals through the end of the year 2021. I wish these wouldn't build. I'm just going ahead and fill this out. So the main thing that we want to do here is to build a foundational community, and that is to establish working relationships among all of you, everybody who shows up, and to bring people into the conversation who we think would be useful, who would benefit from it, and who would contribute to this particular conversation. Automotive software itself is really hard, and automotive Linux is going to be extremely hard, and we need as many hands on deck as we can get. We do need to develop some robust community guidelines. We do have a COC that's sorry, Rich, remind me what COC is. It's too early in the morning here.
Code of conduct.
Thank you. Code of conduct. We do need to develop some contribution guidelines. As soon as we have a base of stuff to contribute to, we will certainly dive into contribution guidelines. But at the moment, the contribution guidelines are to participate in discussions like this. As far as the code of conduct goes, we are subject to the to the CentOS code of conduct, and that will guide our behavior and the way that we treat each other in these meetings. You can take a look at it. It is online on the CentOS site. It is intended to be both welcoming and to create a safe place for everybody. And if there is anything that happens in this SIG or elsewhere in CentOS that you feel is unsafe, please feel free to come to me privately. I have had training in conflict resolution, and I would be happy to help sort things out. I have a hard time thinking that any toxicity that would show up would be intentional, but the most important thing to know is that you'll be heard and that the issue will be handled. We will need to vote for some administrative roles. The idea when I made this slide a month ago was that we would select and vote for them. In the last meeting, everybody kind of took one step back and left me standing in line by myself. So I think that I will be probably functioning as the person who puts slides together and stumbles through the initial discussion in every meeting for the next few months at least. And that's a role that I'm happy to take. So another specific goal is to develop plans for this variant and to create the build and test infrastructure. And we'll hear in a few minutes exactly how that's going. And then to do a presentation at Automotive Linux Summit. This is a note that I believe the call for participation for Automotive Linux Summit ends on Sunday. For those who don't know, Automotive Linux Summit is the only, as far as I know, conference that is dedicated to automotive Linux. It is put together by the great folks at AGL, and it happens every December in Japan, in conjunction with Open Source Summit Japan.
Seeing
I
a
know.
theme here,
What's
Jeffro,
that?
that I'm seeing a theme that the whole reason we've got this SIG put together is so we can get stickers.
There is, there is a. That's not the only reason,
You
but
sure about that? It's on
I
every
would.
slide.
It's an important reason.
Okay, all
Mark,
right.
that's just a lowbrow criticism that's constantly made of attempts to engage openly. That all we're
See,
interested in stickers.
I
I
knew
reject
that you were
that.
going to be toxic about this, Ian. That you and I would be the ones first going to Jeffro for this. Yeah, exactly. For this conflict resolution thing. So there you go, Jeffro. You got your problem children right in front of you.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to know that we've got that handled straight out of the gate. So, stickers aside, I know I have submitted a talk for, or I'm in the process of submitting a talk for Automotive Linux Summit. I would encourage anybody else to do so. I don't know if anybody from who is on the program committee is on the call, but if you are and you had any desire to say something, let me know. I'd be happy to give you the floor for a few minutes. I think it's a great conference. I have listened to many of the talks that have gone on at ALS over the
Hey,
years.
this is Walt Miner. Yeah, I'm on the committee,
Well,
and yeah, so I think you covered it pretty well, Jeffro.
okay.
Can I ask what the general tone of the presentations are? Are they deeply technical, very high level, somewhere in the middle?
It's a mix. So it really does tend to be a mix. We do tend to have people doing deep dives into things that they've done either with AGL or with other Linux bits to get into cars. And then we tend to have some higher level presentations around what's been going on in automotive grade Linux and other automotive projects around the world. So it's a mix. We look at both.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it seems to me to be the tone seems to be very similar to Embedded Linux conference in that regard, where you get some a mix of high level stuff and really deep down in the weeds low level stuff. And
Yep.
and yeah, it's a great conference. I enjoy it very much. I enjoyed it even before I was working in automotive software.
And I have tons and tons. I just moved from Chicago to North Carolina, and I moved tons of AGL stickers with me.
Oh,
So
excellent.
if anybody wants any AGL stickers, just let me know. Give me your mailing address, and I will mail them to you. I've been known to mail them away.
Stickers.
Really, really good to know. So
I will be at ELC in a few weeks.
okay,
I will have stickers with me at ELC.
excellent. Yeah.
And there will be an AGL. There will be an AGL BOF that I'll just plug this for a second. I will have an AGL BOF session during ELC. So.
Okay, excellent. I know that I will be there virtually. Uh, I'm in Canada, and travel is not allowed from my country back to the U.S. at the moment. So, so I will be attending virtually, but I do plan to be there. Do you know if the BOFs are going to be kind of simulcast or webcast, or if they're going to be?
I hope
remember.
so. Let me check on that, and I'll find out.
Okay, I don't remember whether or which platform they're using for this one, or whether that's going to be enabled. But
The
I hope
last couple I have had BOFs that I've requested that they simulcast them, and we did do that. So
okay,
when they were virtual.
okay, good, very good. So, anyway, those are the goals for the SIG. If anybody has something that they would like to add to this list, whether it involves stickers or not, let me know, and we can make sure to get that up. Also, all of these things exist on the wiki. The content for these slides and the notes from the last meeting, the notes for this meeting will be on the CentOS wiki, that is. So definitely go and take a look and add things. You can, since it's a wiki, you can change things if you wish. So one of the things that we were going to be doing was talking about the decision-making process. right now we don't really have a whole lot to make decisions about. The thing that we're mostly making decisions about is how we're all going to work together. And the main idea is that let's decide this together. This is not something where one person or one company or one group is going to be handing down a decision-making process. This is something that we all decide together within the context of CentOS. So I'm glad that we have Rich on the call who can help guide us through that process. But really, this is a group effort. So please dive in. We do have some community standards that are already, some of which are already set up and some of which we need to set up. We do have mailing list. There's a link to the mailing list on the wiki page. There is an IRC channel. It has been quiet for several weeks. I would be very happy to see conversations start happening there. If they aren't going to happen there, there's no requirement that we have to use that. In fact, I find mailing lists to be much easier to search afterwards.
What's the IRC channel?
The IRC channel, does somebody have a link to it that they could post?
And where's it hosted?
It's hosted on Libera.
Okay. CentOS Automotive on Libera. CentOS Automotive.
CentOS. I can't edit this right now. CentOS
Automotive.
Somebody can post the link.
CentOS Automotive. It's posted.
Okay, good. Thank you. Please go and join that.
Need to modify my hex chat settings.
Right. That's always fun. There is this periodic meeting. This particular formal meeting happens about once a month. What I would like to start on the alternating 2-week cycle in this same time slot, or possibly in a different time slot, because we've been asked to mix up the times a little bit, so to enable other people to join, is to set up an office hours that's more informal. That maybe is we'll just open up a call. We won't have slides, and we will just open it up to general conversation for an hour. So I'll be setting that up after this meeting, and we'll send a note out to the mailing list on this group. And I still need to figure out how to get things into the CentOS calendar. Seems to involve incantations and sacrificing animals and things, but we'll figure it out. Code of conduct we already discussed. We can discuss any additional guidelines we want, but we will following the CentOS Code of Conduct. It's a very sanely written document. And then as far as leadership roles, the only leadership role we have right now is the requirement for a chair. And the main job of the chair is to run these meetings and to report back to the board on a quarterly basis. Rich, one thing I had a question about is, when do we do that? Is there a specific meeting in which groups come in and do this, or we just book a slot at the next board meeting for updating the CentOS board? Maybe it's just not online. So anyway, we will sort that out.
I don't know the Rich is with us.
Okay, I thought
just in case you're worried he's ignoring you.
I know he wouldn't ignore me on purpose unless he's busy out finding some stickers. But I think that's probably enough of me going on at length. I would love to start getting some actual technical content. So let's look through the list here. Pierre, Yves, are you on? Thought he had some. Okay, you had some stuff that you wanted to present, is that correct?
So I have a couple of things I want to discuss. The first thing is the place where the SIG will work. That's going to be a Git project where we are going to be pushing things like the OS build manifest, OS build being the tool that we use to build images, and the manifest being basically the recipes for OS build on how to build things. There are 3 options, basically. There is gitlab.com, there is GitHub, and there is I'll do them in the reverse order. Pagure.io is the place where SIGs are most of the SIGs are currently working. It's integrated with the CentOS account system. On the con side, this future is a little bit nebulous currently. We don't.
Right. Yeah. Pierre, sorry, your audio is kind of cutting out periodically.
Let me try with a video to see if that helps.
Okay.
So we don't really know what the future of the Pagure platform and software will. The second aspect to this is there has already been work done to build a CI pipeline, something that basically every time there is a change in CentOS streams or every time there is a change to the automotive CI, to the automotive SIG project, it's going to build all the images to see if they still work. So there has already been work being done there, and that work was not based on using the Pagure project. So if we were to choose that one, we would have to basically do a little bit of work to adjust the work. The second platform is GitHub. That is the first platform where things were worked upon using GitHub Actions. But using GitHub Actions means you're very much tied to the platform.
Mm.
Red Hat has recently taken a stance to invest on GitLab. That's where the CentOS Stream project as a whole is being developed. And there is a CentOS namespace available on GitLab. It is also the place where the CI pipeline that's being worked upon has been migrated to. So basically, it already interacts with the GitLab API. It's already architected around GitLab. So I think this would be my recommended platform for it. Then we have the CentOS namespace being the ideal place, lab.com/CentOS/SIG being the ideal place for our work to land. There is one issue though. The CentOS namespace is not linked to the CentOS account system, which means that you will need to be added to the CentOS, to the automotive SIG group on the CentOS account system, and that membership cannot be reflected on the GitLab level, which means you need to maintain a list of people on both sides, and it gets quickly tedious and annoying. That is something that the CentOS project is looking to fix, but that is going to require a few months, probably, discussions and figure things out between CentOS, Red Hat, and so one thing we could do today is actually grab a space under the Red Hat namespace of GitLab. So that will be something like GitLab.com/redhat/automotive/automotive SIG. A little bit, we have twice automotive in there, but at least it does give us the flexibility of having other repos under that namespace if we want it. There is pros and cons to this approach as well. The pros is that that's something we can quickly set up today and start publishing our work and documentations there. The cons is that only people with a Red Hat account will be able to have commit access to the project. So anybody in the community that wants to contribute will have to go via merge request. That can work with accounts, but that is not very community friendly as a whole.
No, it's not.
I can conclude with my recommendation, and then I'll let anybody voice their opinion on this. Is I would recommend that we do GitLab.com/redhat/automotive/automotive SIG now, because this is the place where it gets us something out in the open that we can recommend as this, that we can present as this is what the SIG is working on. In the meantime, in the same time, we mirror that project under the CentOS namespace. So the project will exist, the code will exist twice, once under the Red Hat namespace, once under the CentOS namespace. But on the CentOS namespace, we'll disable issues and merge requests, because no one will be able to close the issues, no one will be able to review them. So it's also not a nice place. But we create the project and mirror things there so that and we make it clear that this is the final destination, or that's the end goal of where we want the SIGs to be. But for technical reasons, we can't actually live there right now. So that would be my recommendation. EOF.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. And it also sounds like it's a good problem to solve more generally for the idea of CentOS SIGs, like getting this sorted out. I can't imagine any other group of this type that's going to want to encourage more open collaboration will want to have an open account system, essentially.
I thought I heard that there was work in progress to allow non-Red Hat accounts commit access to certain projects, but I could be fantasizing. I'll dig into that a little further.
Do you mean in the context of Stream, Clark? Like people would actually be able to?
Yes. I mean, not on the Rails side of things. That's obviously ours and paying control of that. But the CentOS Stream side of thing, it makes sense for us to allow non-Red Hat.
The way SIGs work currently is they mostly work with dist-git. Dist-git is not hosted on GitLab. Non-Red Hat employee can commit to Git repos on dist-git that is not hosted on GitLab.
Gotcha.
And there is one other thing is I've started to work on documentation for basically what the SIG has been up to until now. I have a proof of concept or example of what this documentation could look like, and I've shared the link in the chat here. My home server, it may be slow to answer, but it is also static HTTP. And it's still work in progress. Not all the sections are filled yet.
Okay.
You've got 40 people hitting your home server now, Pierre.
You do.
It's probably not going to make your audio problems any better. So, and just to add, just in case the broader context of this wasn't clear, what we're hoping to demonstrate here is we've essentially been creating hypothetical software loads of what we think an automotive load derived from rel content might look like, and we want to make this visible in the SIG. We want this to be one of the first things that we show. So there's nothing earth-shattering, but it's a way for us to start to understand what subcomponents of rel are likely to be relevant for automotive, and also to show how some of the tooling that we've already created for Edge can be used to create these images. So that's the broader goal of this initial offering up through the SIG.
And my selfish goal is to figure out a way to get a real-time ARM64 kernel out in front of people running on Raspberry Pis, NVIDIA platforms, Qualcomm, whatever. I've talked, Pierre and I talked briefly about how we can create a kernel spin for this SIG, and I think we're going to move forward with that.
Sweet.
Once we have your kernel, it's trivial to include it in some of the images we are building.
Right. Yeah, I mean right now the convention,
repo and
yeah, right now the convention is that we create a kernel package called kernel-RT. So usually the place that things freak out is somebody presumes that the kernel package is going to be named kernel, and we need to make sure that any tooling is adapted to deal with something that's not just kernel but kernel-RT. Or we have been toying with the idea of calling this package kernel-auto to distinguish it.
Provide kernel, or
we do provide kernel, yes.
Okay.
From the RPM perspective, we provide the kernel tag, but and we would continue to do that here. But from in the Red Hat automotive sense, we've been talking about the idea that we're going to derive the automotive kernel from rel, and that the main difference, and from the rel-RT kernel actually, the main difference being that a lot of config differences. We're obviously not going to build in InfiniBand or Fiber Channel or crazy enterprise technologies like that. And so we thought, well, we should probably call it a different package name. So I've been using kernel-auto as a placeholder. If somebody wants a different name, I mean, I'm not tied to it. Let's thrash it out, and if there's some better name or whatever, happy to accommodate there. But I'm just trying to figure out how to get right now, if you look up on the CentOS Stream 9 tree, there are two branches. There's main and main RT. You might expect main is the main CentOS 9 kernel that's being built. And main RT is essentially that main branch with the preempt RT patch set applied. And it's moving relatively quickly because there's lots of changes happening upstream. As we all know, this is the year of real-time, year of RT. It's going to happen. Things are merging upstream. The preempt RT locking patch set is going into 5.15, as are the MM changes. I don't think we'll have a full-up, ready-to-build RT kernel until 5.17. That's just the way it's been staged. But that means that we're going to churn quite a bit in the RHEL and CentOS world, because eventually we want to be able to build all this stuff out of the same branch. We don't really want to have a main RT branch. We just want to have a main and be able to say, use these configs and make me a RHEL kernel, or make me a RHEL RT kernel, or make me an automotive kernel. So, but that's going to be into next year before we can hope to resolve all this. And so I hope people are not disappointed in us that we don't have a better plan to roll this stuff out and make it available. But unfortunately, we're really churning, and we're just going to have to kind of roll with it and adapt. But I hope to have us something that we can play with on a Raspberry Pi, or if you were fortunate enough to have purchased an NVIDIA Jetson Xavier before they shut down their production lines and quit making them, that would be a fun thing to do as well. So.
Maybe zooming out just a little bit, I guess it'd be good for us to talk about the kind of content that we expect to see in this variant. Real time obviously is one of those features. So do we want to talk about? I mean, that would be a difference from the existing CentOS screen. Are there any other features or that would be present in the automotive OS that are not present in CentOS?
CentOS builds the CAN bus modules, right?
No.
It does not. Well, all right
No.
then. Difference number 2.
Okay.
It doesn't build any. The RHEL kernel does not build any of the modules that are needed in. I didn't even see it on my Fedora system. So.
I swear I thought I saw some CAN bus stuff being built, but I'm getting old. I'm hallucinating. So, but those are sort of things that we'll have to have. So, Jeffrey, I mean, the basic difference is we're going to have some pretty serious config file differences between RHEL and the automotive. Enterprise kernel has all kinds of weird technologies that we don't care about in the automotive world, and vice versa. We have strange things that they could care less about as well.
Right. I think it'd be great. Be great to document all of that and put a list up on the wiki.
We do have a document that we've been socializing internally. I'm not sure that it's really ugly. Well, I mean, it's about 6 pages, and put a stick. That's the way to fix it. It's about 6. It's a Google Doc.
Put headers and footers on it, Clark. You'd be amazed how much.
Yeah. If I paginate it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets longer too, so you can.
And this Ian guy has scattered offensive comments all the way through it, and so it would not make me feel safe to post this. But how about if we try and distill it? And because we've been meaning to do that anyway. I mean, one of the things that we have to do is actually generate a def config out of it so that we can build this stuff. So I'll take an action to try and turn that weird requirements discussion argument document into a real description of the configs that we care about, that we think we care about, and put it out on the wiki and let everybody argue about it some more.
And that would be great. Let's talk about it on the mailing list as well, because I think that this is one of the major things that I get asked about. Like, what is this variant going to look like?
Yeah.
And we need to have some kind of an answer to start with.
Originally we thought we might be doing a lot of building technologies into the kernel for boot speed.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of turns out that the module loading portion is such a small fraction of what slows down booting that for the moment anyway, we're going to heavily modularize everything. And then as we, because one of the things that is driving us is boot time, being able to get up and start displaying backup camera frames in less than 2 seconds.
And I'm sure that on the call is aware of that, but that's a requirement.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to throw that out just so everybody knows where I'm coming from. And originally we thought, oh, well, we'll build a file system, like Ext4 or XFS or whatever we pick. We'll build that in the image so we don't have to. But it's a stupid fraction. Whereas we got 800 milliseconds that's being taken up by device initialization in the firmware before we even get to loading Linux. So we got other things to attack. And even if we decide to start with, let's turn everything into a module. Build it as basically an all mod config. We can change that down the road if we come to conclusion and say, well, we need these 6 modules built into rather than as modules. That's easy. So I guess right now the general tenet is everything is a module for the moment, and we'll come up with a list of the specific modules we care about building and post them on the wiki.
I think a combination of a distilled guiding principles and an actual live kernel config that's building would be that would be the magic. And I understand we're a few weeks away from, for mecho logistical reasons, having kernel builds. So
yeah.
Sorry, Gab, go ahead. Then after that, I want to step in for team user space briefly, but go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, Gabriel, you're first.
You first. Okay. Now, yeah. With respect to we're talking about areas of focus, right? So I was thinking, we know that. I think that from an automotive point of view, it will be, quite important, for instance, for the CentOS automotive distribution support the AUTOSAR vendors, right? And to allow them, especially, to experiment and collaborate with the AUTOSAR consortium. Now, I don't know how to do that practically because, it's, CentOS Automotive is like it's an open project, whereas the AUTOSAR consortium, it's not. However, the AUTOSAR specification and the explanatory document of the architecture, these are public, right? So, and effectively, they are, they can be evaluated with respect to the automotive distro of CentOS. On the flip side, I think it would be good, if we were able to build a collaboration really with the consortium, so that, for example, when they deliver, the demo framework, they may be able, to use, CentOS OS automotive distro also as a sort of one of the test distribution. Ideally, now I don't know if it is possible, like politically, and with respect to the whole, constraints. So I'm not, I don't know that, but as a goal, I think it would be very good if the CentOS automotive distro, would be a sort one of the reference OS for AUTOSAR vendors, to provide related implementation, and maybe for the AUTOSAR consortium to to deliver demos, right?
Gab, it looked to me like a ton of the AUTOSAR, and I keep wanting to say AUTOSAR as in Russian old ruler, because that's the way it sounds like whenever Dmitry says it. So So whenever you hear Osier, to me, you're just thinking of the ancient Russian ruler. But it looked to me like the Osier stuff was basically drawn from a lot of the IEEE, the POSIX specification. Would you say that's
it
true?
relies on the spec, but
Okay.
it adds to it.
Yes.
It
So do we have any?
the spec.
I haven't dug too deep into the spec yet because it's big. But have you guys seen any big conflicts with what we do with what Osier wants to do?
Yes.
Or
I can talk hours off, but not for this meeting.
okay, Steven. Maybe we can start an email thread or something like that on the list and debate it, because I'd really like to hear what we think are going to be problems supporting someone that is all Osier all the time.
Okay,
Like to know where the pain points are.
I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, and this is public in the Osier document. So the reference demos, they are already Linux based. However, if you're not a member, you don't have access to these demos, right? So that would make me think, that these are, I mean, that Linux should be kind of compliant with what is required by Osier. I mean, my idea was like, to provide a sort of to start a collaboration to optimize the features that may be required by the Osier vendors, and to even to maybe to work together, to improve these reference demos so that they can be like maybe a stronger baseline, right? And
Yeah,
Do you think it's reasonable to try to work with Osier to change the spec so that we could allow an open source implementation?
that to me, Alex, is probably the biggest concern I've seen with a lot of the automotive stuff is that they tend to come, all those other folks tend to come at it with a very proprietary mindset, and they're really not used to doing the whole thing out in the open like posing. So I think we're going to run into conflicts of perception and mindset.
Well, I mean, fundamentally, like if you read the specs, you're not allowed to do anything, basically.
Yeah.
Unless you're a paying
open source.
member and buy a license or whatever. Well, you can't open source it, but you can't even like use it for anything other than looking at that.
Huh.
Essentially.
We have a hand that has gone up. Someone is
This is Philip. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm in a noisy place. I just come out of visiting the new simulation facility of BMW in Munich, which was really cool. And they have 14 new simulators in place. So there are two levels in Osier. You have Osier Classic, and I think we can forget about this one because this is formal, specification, and you have to have formal proof of implementation. So this is not going to fly with Linux. And then you have Osier Classic that rely on POSIX interface. And for this, there is one specification that is named ARA, which is the one that is doing the gateway in between the classic world and the POSIX world. And to be honest, if ever we can implement something, and if there is a demand for something which is not obvious, outside of that specification, I don't see what could be done.
Okay, but so I think that, the idea, from my side, I don't think we can have like a sort of open implementation of Osier. It would be like more tuning and maybe refining the features of the CentOS Automotive distribution, to better support Osier. When I say Osier, I implicitly meant the adaptive platform.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something we need to make clear. But I was with you. There's no point in looking at the other. It's when I say Osier, you got to immediately tack on adaptive because
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you.
I understand that you fundamentally initially like what we want is to get the other vendors to run on this, but long term, it's kind of would be very nice to have an implementation of it because you can if this is fundamentally what you're going to use to run a car, and we're not allowed to ship it, it's I don't know, not great.
Yeah, I don't think this is the only situation we've ever encountered where there's a quasi-proprietary middleware standard that we want, at a minimum, we want to be able to host. So, but it is
we've
interesting.
we've butted our heads against that a couple of times.
Been a few of those in the last couple of decades. So, I wanted to try and briefly shift gears before we run out of time, as I said, and tag in for team user space here for a minute in terms of other things that we might surface in the SIG.
There's something besides the kernel, Ian?
There is.
Do we actually need anything besides the kernel?
What would we do with the kernel if we didn't have
I
So there are at least a smattering of packages that are in our sort of sample application load that are neither in RHEL nor are they in EPEL, I believe.
Like what?
Steven shook his head no.
No,
and if there aren't,
things like
we would
DLT
like to...
login.
No. Sorry, I meant no as in no, they are not in EPEL. I was agreeing with you by shaking. So by saying no, I was agreeing with you.
More generally, there are I've heard that there's a scheme where somebody
sad
says
part
yes.
is I understood all of that.
There are also people who say yes when they mean no. So the point being,
generally, these would be like Geneva software and things like that, and AGL.
Yeah, that we already have some examples in addition to an automotive-specific kernel spin, which has some interesting challenges for us in terms of the mechanics that we want to use for building. That we don't have to get into too much of that dirty laundry here, other than it needs to be clear that that's associated with our SIG and not in stream, which means that it's on the path to getting into RHEL. But we'll have other packages and already do that uniquely belong to this offering, and we're going to put those in the SIG. And I think we'd like to have the same workflow for all of these that exists with stream, which is to say that they're visible. It's where primary development is done on them until we're very close to shipping them, and there are ways to publicly contribute. And I think this, again, we just happen to be in the vanguard of SIGs that are also trying to live on top of stream. So this would be.
But do you mean we have these packages in a separate repository or in the regular EPEL repo?
There will be things that are not in EPEL. There already are, I believe, things that are not in RHEL. There's things in the sample load that aren't in RHEL, therefore aren't in CentOS Stream. They are not in EPEL, but they are things that we want to use. And
yeah, but when we add them, couldn't we just add them to EPEL?
We could add them to EPEL, but here and this is speaking more towards the relationship between the SIG and the offering. But the reason we have Stream and the goal of Stream is to have an area that's very close to what's actually going to become released, but have a way for people to see it and also collaborate on it. And we would want to do the same thing here. Whereas EPEL doesn't, the EPEL charter is a little different. So that's my point, is there will be things that the SIG will be the home for that we want to be closely tied to the types of workflows that we have in CentOS Stream that will be unique to automotive. There'll be an automotive optimized kernel, and there'll be packages associated with it as well. So that's just me attempting to high level that. Won't just be a kernel.
We're going to move everything down to the
EOF, as Pierre said.
I was expecting. Sorry,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was thinking that what we would do is we would end in a multi-stage setup. We would do stuff in the SIG first, get it proven, and then work on moving it up into Fedora and then into EPEL. for the stuff that really matters. There are certain things that really matter. There are certain things that, we could put a bunch of time into some little part and find out there's only going to be 5 people in it, and and as soon as those 5 people go on to something else, it's not worth being put into the OS. But the SIG would be where that would happen, and then we would work upstream, like we said somewhere else,
Right.
where our upstream is Fedora and Apple when needed.
Okay.
Well, I'm kind of, Stephen, I'm kind of thinking of this as upstream for automotive.
Well, yes, we are upstream for automotive, but there is upstream.
Yeah, upstream from the
upstream.
Yeah, I mean, as a kernel developer, you send something to substream person.
Okay, man. Yeah.
And then they it to Linus, or they send it up to the next layer, and then they send it to Linus. Part of that fish going upstream. Bless you.
Right.
Thank you. At least I muted myself before subjecting you all to that monstrous sneeze.
All right.
So on that note, I think we're kind of running short on time today. This has been a great kind of exploration of the technical side, which I was really glad to see. And let's continue it. Let's continue this discussion. Go ahead, Clark.
The only other thing I would ask is, so if I'm going to put together a list of kernel modules for this thing, we also get somebody working on a list of projects/packages that we care about being in our user space image? Because that's the very next step. I mean, okay, as much as I love the kernel and everything's great, eventually we have to exec something. Like, so system D probably needs to be there. And yeah, I know, Ian, you're going to give me a hard time about that. But
no, I know. I was actually going to try and answer your question earnestly for a change.
Okay.
That would be the point of the sample load. Basically, it's our best.
Okay.
It's our best effort at what we think, and it's pretty robust user space because it includes infotainment content. So
I guess what I'm saying is, could we flesh out the CentOS, some of the CentOS SIG wiki pages with a start of these documents? Because we've been looking for a place to actually put this stuff and collaborate for a while. Why not just use the SIG wiki and say, okay, look, here's what we're going to do with the kernel, and everybody can argue and express their opinions, and we can all come to consensus and come up with a good config for a kernel in automotive. We can do the same thing for the big old bag of packages that we want to consider for an automotive user space.
Yeah. No, and that's what my preference, what I've been pushing for, is let's show that in the form of a working artifact as the reference point, and then discuss it on top of that, much like you could do that with the I think you have a few. It's easier for you to put together a handful of guiding principles, which I think you have done a good job of, and it's a shorter document. And then the reason the other document looks ugly is it's basically trying to have a kernel config as in document discussion form, when really I don't know. At some point, it becomes better to just have it be the config and the kernels that's compiled, and you can comment in that context. I don't know the precise.
I should probably go do a search right now to see how many unique kernel config options there are. I hesitate to do it, but Yeah,
that'd be interesting. So we are at the top of the hour, and I know that I have a hard stop, as well as I'm sure a lot of other people do. Let's continue this discussion on the mailing list. Let's get some of these wiki pages rolling, and I will also set up and send out a meeting invitation for 2 weeks from now to have an open house or office hours or whatever we want to call it. So great, and we'll continue the discussion about the infrastructure as well on the mailing list. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. Great meeting, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, Jeffro.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffro.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeffro.
Thanks all.
Thanks all.